Hello, everyone. Welcome to the DM show. Hi, Martin. How are you?
Great. How are you, Deirdre? It's so great to see you again. And I think, like you, I'm very excited about this show. In fact, these are our fastest paced shows with today's guest. So maybe we should just bring her on stage and get
We
started.
should. I do want to mention, though, Ginny was here exactly 1 year ago.
I noticed that on the same day.
Yes. So I bet we're going to hear a lot of updates on PESO and AI. All right. Well, everyone joining us, coming back on the show is Gini Dietrich. She is the author of the book Spin Sucks, and she's also the founder of the Spin Sucks community. She is a podcaster. She's also the creator of the PESO model and the PESO certification. She's going to talk to us today about PESO as an operating system and visibility engineer. So here comes Ginny.
I think maybe I should put it on my calendar for this time next year as well. Let's just do it as an annual thing.
No, I think we're going to start doing it twice a year.
Oh, perfect. Once a quarter.
Once a quarter is good.
I'm so happy to be with my friends on a Friday. It's so nice.
I know. Thank you, Ginny, for being here. My goodness. We get to hang out. We get to pick your brain about a bunch of stuff. So
and,
maybe.
Go ahead, Martin. Joining us.
Oh, yeah.
Ray is here from Breakenridge. Hi, Ray. Brenda Poor from Kansas City. Nice to see you, Brenda.
Is Lisa Davis here? She told me she was coming. So.
Oh, gosh, I hope so. I haven't seen Lisa in a while. So, Ginny, when you were last here, you were talking about the PESO model. Maybe you could tell us how it's evolved.
Oh, my gosh. It has evolved.
Yeah.
Not a small undertaking. You know, we launched, and Martin was part of this, but we launched the PESO model certification the first time in 2020. And we built it, and we worked with Syracuse University to create a partnership so that the certification came from them as well. And we launched it 2 weeks before the world shut down. So the timing on that was not fabulous, but, as the years have gone on, we've, of course, refreshed and done all of the things that we needed to. In 2024, we started to add AI into things like helping you with media list development and pitching and, some content development ideas and things like that, which was fine at the time because generative AI was maybe like a year old at that point. But this year we took a big step back and we said, okay, let's look at how everything has evolved just for our industry using AI. And so we relaunched it as an operating system. So now the PESO model sits underneath the marketing and communications work that you do so that it's constantly moving, evolving, compounding, and it's measurable and integrated all on its own. And as part of that, we used AI to help you get there. So it was a gigantic undertaking, gigantic. And when I finished with all the content, I said to my team, please don't say PESO model certification for at least a month. It was but it's really if I can toot my own horn a little bit, it's really, really, really good. It's really sophisticated, and it has AI prompts in there that we use. We built a PESO model AI that you use, and so you can use those two things to really build this operating system.
Excellent. Ginny, if somebody wants to find out about PESO model certification, where can they go?
Spinsucks.com. It's all there.
Perfect. Great. Well, you've been busy.
It's been a lot. It's a lot. And things are changing so fast. I started playing with AI at the tail end of 22, and so here we are, 3.5 years later, and it has completely reformed and evolutionized the way that I run my business, the way that I've built my team, all of it, like the way that we work with clients, the kinds of things. Like I had a conversation with somebody yesterday about synthetic audiences and how we're using those to help them think about messaging before they go with public with them. I mean, it's just the stuff that we're doing with it is.
Yeah, it's really crazy how quickly things are changing. And all of us lived through the early days of social media.
Right.
That was fast.
Right. Right.
Twitter, connecting with Twitter.
Yeah.
I connected with people on Twitter, having tweet chats, different shout outs, follow Friday, where, you encourage people to follow other people. But this is a pace and speed that is so crazy. I posted about this on LinkedIn yesterday. So I have a paid version of Claude. Actually, because of the training I do, I need ChatGPT and Gemini as well. But Claude's the one I spend the most on.
Yep.
And I hooked up Dispatch to my phone, gave it access to computer files and my desktop. And I said to it, okay, what's going on this week? What do I need to prepare? It read my calendar, gave me some things, mentioned the show. And at the end of our interaction, it said, say hi to Ginny. Now, I don't know what you're talking with Claude about, but it's clearly
I also love Claude.
Getting closer to Claude.
Okay, that's a little creepy, I'm not gonna lie.
It was. And so I thought, okay, it's trying to be friendly like a person might. And so that's where we have to step back and say, whoop, nope, this is not a human being. But the PESO model GPT is fantastic. Where can people find it, Ginny?
Spinsucks.com.
So, but is there a URL, or just go to spinsucks.com?
Yeah, if you go to the URL, it's in the navigation. It's just crazy. Yeah.
So, you know what? Why don't we get right into the meat of this? And anyone who is on here, and we have Christina Shorthouse is here from Vancouver, Diane Jones, Money, Philip Tate, who says hello to you. And
Philip.
is a human that we all know.
We all know.
Thanks for coming, Philip.
He is human.
Can you tell us what a visibility engineer is, and why communications professionals are really the best people to maybe take on that role?
I think you both know that for at least a decade, I have been talking about how communicators have such a great opportunity to take a leadership position in all of these things. Like in the beginning, and Martin, you mentioned social media before, but in the beginning, I really believed that communicators were the ones that should own social, that we were the ones that should own content, that we are the ones who should own, native advertising and sponsored content and those kinds of things, because we're the storytellers. And of course, PESO has place for it in marketing too. But as a communicator, I want to see the communications industry take this leadership position, right? I think right now we have an even bigger opportunity for a leadership position, because what we're learning about the large language models over and over again is that they're scraping your website content, and then they're comparing it to the content that's being published about you. So by journalists, by creators, by influencers, by newsletter authors, by podcast hosts, is that information the same? And can it recognize the patterns between what you're publishing on your website and what's being published about you by third-party credible sources, right? That's owned and earned media. So when I think about it from that perspective, and I started to talk about this last summer, but really we can engineer our visibility. So if we think about how we're using our owned media and how we're connecting that story to our earned media efforts, that's engineering the visibility that's going to show up in AI answers, in AI summaries, in AI recommendations. And it's going to help humans understand what we do, what we stand for, what solutions we have, and what problems we solve.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
It's almost a part of it's what we're doing. You're just taking it to such a intense higher level.
Yes, it is what we do.
It's what we do. So Ginny, with skills, do we naturally have these skills, or are there other skills that we need to learn? And how far do these skills go? Do you see, because you mentioned you were working with Syracuse, and it was Newhouse, I think, Syracuse. Newhouse. Yep. Well, how many other universities need to start incorporating this kind of learning so that students come out and have the skills?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it's one we grapple with a lot internally. I think the answer to that is twofold. One, I will tell you that there's probably about 200 or so universities that do offer it as part of their program, and we are ramping up that that program with universities in the next 18 months. So 100% agree with that. But I also think there's a bigger business implication about all of this, because what I am hearing over and over and over again anecdotally is that companies are not hiring new college graduates, and they're not hiring new college graduates because we don't have anything for them to do. Like, think about from your own perspective. When we talk about it internally, we would have an intern or a new college graduate build the media lists, write the pitches, write the news releases, outline the blog posts, develop some social media assets for approval. AI does all of that, and it does all of it faster and almost more efficiently, right? So what do we have young professionals do? And I think there's a combination of, not only do you have to understand how to use PESO and integrate it and measure it, but you have to understand how to direct your AI agents to do that work. And I think those are the things that we should be teaching students, so that when they come into the workforce, they have that skill set that maybe some of their peers with more experience don't have yet.
Yeah, I think companies right now are being really, really short-sighted, not
so
hiring even more young people. One, because younger people, especially if you're millennial or Gen X, or Gen Z, sorry, wrong generation. If you're millennial or Gen Z, you really understand the tools and how to use AI in a way that those of us who've grown up with Google don't quite get instinctively. They're really native at the platforms. And that, I think, is really important. Second of all, they have perspectives that we don't have.
Right.
So if all we're doing is thinking, okay, let's just offload all the jobs to AI, that's not a great long-term attitude, because you're going to miss that whole layer of people who grow up to be managers and then senior managers and leaders. We have a question from Ray along that. I'm just going to post it here. What advice would you give Ray's daughter, who is currently a communications major in college, a junior?
It's rough. I think if she can demonstrate that she can tie what she's learning in school with artificial intelligence. And I know it's tough right now because, of course, professors are also talking about, we don't allow AI and stuff because they're cheating with it. And you're just like, oh my gosh, that's also short-sighted. So I think if she can demonstrate the combination of comms plus AI, she's going to have a leg up. They're, of course, using your network to help her find an internship and things like that. But there are organizations that are actively building intern programs for these kids to be able to learn how to direct AI agents to get the right outputs versus doing the work themselves. And I think finding those kinds of internship opportunities are really smart. And they're not super competitive yet because they're all just sort of getting off the ground. But if you can direct her to some of those kinds of things, I think she'll be really in a really good place.
Yeah, and if I can speak from the instructor, the professor side of things, and there is a big divide with instructors, professors who say use it, and those who say don't, you're cheating. And you really have to come to a middle ground. What I try to do, and I mention this to other colleagues, is encourage students to use AI in a smart way, not to offload work, not to write a paper for me, but maybe to do research that you then vet or challenge you or edit, something you've written, but you still need to do the heavy lifting. And students, I try to encourage them to test out the tools. I think this is still available to college students. If you have a college or university email, Google offers you free access, or they did, to Gemini. So the paid version of Gemini for a year with your college access. So it's worth checking that out. I can't test it because it won't let me do it. But from what I've heard from some students, it's still active.
That's fantastic.
That's great. So what about the professionals who are already in the work world? They're middle managers, they're directors. Where do they fall into, I got to brush up on my skills? And is there interest there? Do they even realize?
I think it's, I mean, exactly what Martin said. I think it's half and half, right? You still have people who are really afraid that AI is going to take their job. I read an interesting quote the other day that said, AI is not going to take your job. The people who use AI effectively will.
Will take your job.
Yeah, that's who's going to take your job. And I also think there's a big short-sighted move of many CEOs saying, oh, well, AI can do this. We're just going to lay off our teams. And I think that's really short-sighted too, because while yes, it can, and like I almost once a day get giddy about the outputs I get from Claude Cowork, you still need people to do it. And I get significantly better results from my AI work because I have more experience, right, than somebody who's 23 years old. So you still need human beings to do those things. And so I would say to people who are not quite there, like, you have to get there. And we were talking about this before we started going live, but this was how everybody was about social media. And I remember being on the road and I was speaking a ton. And I remember I don't remember where I was, but I was speaking to a CEO group of like 10 CEOs. And I did a 3-hour social media workshop for them. And we took a break about halfway through and I ran to the restroom and I filled my water bottle. And as I was going back into the room, one of the attendees stopped me and he said, it must be super frustrating for you right now. And I said, why? And he said, because you're carving the path and you're putting up the lights, but no one is following you. And I said, they will. And he said, I don't think they will. He said, no, social media is for the kids. It's a fad. It's never going to hit our business. And I was like, okay.
Right.
Same thing here, right? Like AI is going to affect your job if it hasn't already. So please just play with it. Test it out.
Yeah, be a tech tester.
Yeah.
Right? Same thing
really.
with social media. You had to be a tech tester.
Yes.
AI,
Yeah, you really did. We have a couple of questions and comment. Well, first a comment from Tess Koppelman, who said, don't discount Gen X. Some of us have been using tech since we were kids too. And great point. Tess, so no, not discounting that.
We don't. We're here. I'm here.
We're here.
Moni has a several-part question, so I'm going to just read it. How are organizations actually differentiating between the AI strategist and almost like the trainer roles in practice? And is there an expectation gap?
Yeah, I mean, I think, yes, there is an expectation gap. It's interesting because I would say that the majority of the companies that we work with are not deploying it yet. They're using it, they're understanding it. They may have like a co-pilot test case that they're using internally that they're allowing their employees to use. They may have an AI advocacy group who's trying to figure it out. But in the big organizations, the IT department is like, nope, not happening. And we've seen that, right? We've seen that with social, we've seen that with analytics, we've seen that with websites, like we've seen that happen. And so that will eventually loosen up. And then there are some companies, but they're not the majority, where they're like, yeah, let's do this. Let's do some synthetic audiences and let's try to use it to measure the right things. And right now we're measuring, from a comms perspective, we're measuring share of voice and message pull through. How can we use AI to improve those kinds of things? So there are some that are very, very, very up. And like, of course, I love to have conversations with those companies, but I would say the majority are still like, Our IT department doesn't want us to do it. We can't put any of our company information in there. It doesn't allow us at work to search the web as well as use the AI. So there's still constraints set up. I think that that's going to change, over the next 5 years, because it has with everything else. But if you're not using it yet, you're not behind yet, but you will be in the next couple of years.
Yeah. I mean, it's moving so quickly. I mean, maybe it's only a year. Who knows? Maybe it's 6 months and you're behind.
Tomorrow.
Gini, you mentioned measurement because you were talking about share of voice. How does this all shift? Does it change the measurement? How communicators look at measurement? Are metrics different? Does AI help if you're a visibility engineer?
Yeah, I will say a couple of things to that. One is that you're now adding in your AI visibility into your metrics, right? So are we showing up in AI answers? Are we being recommended by AI? Are we showing up in the AI summaries, right? So, and a lot of that right now is manual because there isn't great software for it yet. I just saw a couple of demos that it's close, not quite there yet, but it will be close probably in the next 6 months. But what I think AI does from a measurement perspective, it doesn't change because we still have to measure our outcomes. We still have to measure to the goals of the organization. What it does for a very right-brain creative marketer or comms pro who doesn't necessarily like the data or understand how to tell the story with the data is it helps you do that. So you can dump your data in there and be like, I have a board meeting on Monday. I need to show results from this, and this. Here's my metric. Here's my data. Help me tell the story. And it does it for you. It does it beautifully for you because the more data and inputs it has, the better off the output is, right? So for those of us who are not left-brained, who don't enjoy numbers and look at a spreadsheet like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do with this, AI helps significantly with that.
Yeah, that's we have a couple more questions and comments. One from Michael Meath. Hi, Michael. Great to see you. Who's enjoying the discussion? Thank you. Diane Jones said, anyone else getting an echo? There is a small echo, and sorry about that, but I think hopefully you can still hear us. And then a question from Tino, and you kind of covered this in your last answer, Gini, but what would you recommend as a first step for someone looking to make their skills more AI visible and discoverable to potential clients? So you were talking about visibility engineering from a content perspective. This is really from an individual or skills perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just like you would do if you're helping a client with it, right? You do the same thing for yourself. If you have a website, if you have a blog, like you start to create content and then do a LinkedIn newsletter, do a Substack newsletter, get yourself on some podcasts, those kinds of things so that you can match that skill set with what you're talking about on your website to what other credible sources are saying about you. And you'll start to show up in AI as well, so that when somebody says, I'm looking for a really good copywriter who has AI skills to help escalate our marketing department, you pop up as a recommendation.
Yeah, and really the first step in doing that is just what you do with your brand. Search yourself, ask AI about you, but then say, tell me what you know about me. Who are people who do things like me? And then you get 2 or 3 other people and look at the citations or the links that are being recommended and see if you can figure out how to get yourself placed on those links. And that, to my humble understanding, is the beginning of being a visibility engineer.
Yeah. The only thing I would add to that, you're exactly right. I would do it in temporary chat or incognito mode so that it does it based on what everybody else is seeing, not on your history.
Yeah.
Good.
We have another question, actually a comment, and unfortunately, because we're on StreamYard, sometimes we don't see the name of the person who made this. So whoever it is, just let us know your name. An interesting approach is to do some training, and the person recommends Anthropic Academy, who has free micro courses focused on the context around prompt engineering, I would highly, highly recommend that course from Anthropic, especially. I've taken a couple of their courses, and really it's helped expand the way I think about AI and prompting as a skill, which is really coding, but with words.
Right. Yep.
Okay, someone else. Justin, let me just pop this up there. I find AI lends itself to creating workflows. How can it lend a hand promoting and building wraparound services? It's a really tough question.
Yeah, I think I need to know more, Justin, about what you're thinking, because I'm not entirely sure how to answer that. If you can give us a little more context.
Yeah, so add it to the comment. And anyone else who has questions or comments, just pop them into chat. We have one from Ayushi. What skills and areas should someone in the data analytics or business intelligence profession focus on to transition into AI?
Oh man, I mean, if you're not already using it, especially if you're in data and analytics and BI, is I would start testing it out for yourself and really think about like things at home. So what are some pain points at home? Like for me, every Sunday I sit down and I'm like, okay, what are we gonna have to eat this week? What is my grocery list? What is everybody not going to yell about because they're having chicken twice in a row instead of like all of those things, right? So that's a massive pain point for me. So I built an AI agent to do that for me. And, you know, in the beginning, I had to say, like, this is what we had last week. We don't want to have chicken more than once a week. I'd like to mix up the meats. I'd like to have a couple vegetarian. You know, I want to make it balanced and healthy. But it also has to be fast because I work full time. I work a lot of hours and I don't want to spend a lot of time cooking dinner. And so in the beginning I had to give it more inputs, but now it's about a year later and I say, okay, it's time. Like, let's figure out what the meal plan is this week. What's my grocery list? It then imports it into Amazon for me. So I can just click it over to my Fresh or Whole Foods order, get it all ordered, and it's ready for pickup or delivery, and I'm done. And I do that in about 15 minutes instead of 3 hours. So all to say, like, figure out what some pain points are. You can do this at work too. Like, what are some pain points where you spend a lot of time, or maybe you procrastinate because it's something that you know you have to get done, but you're just like, ugh, it's such a big project and I don't want to start it, especially on Friday afternoon. Like, figure out what those things are and then have it help you figure out what the solutions are for those things.
Yeah, and that's where an AI agent helps. We've 2 comments, and Deirdre, I think we're almost.
Fine.
And
it always goes so fast.
Yeah. Diane says what she does is tell businesses to ask the question, are there any, to an AI system, are there any red flags I need to know about name of company before I go into business with them?
I love that, Diane. That's good.
Yeah,
That's
it's a really great way to
vet
clients or help companies maybe prevent a crisis.
Yeah, I love that.
It's good.
Molly said, if companies aren't hiring new grads, who ends up moving up the ladder when more senior people retire or move on?
Yeah, I think that goes to what, Martin, you were talking about earlier about how short-sighted it is, because if we're not hiring, and I think as business owners, we are responsible for hiring new grads, because if we don't, 5 years from now, we're not going to have mid-level leaders and managers that we need. And we're going to have people retiring on the back end, and there's not going to be anybody to hire. So we have a responsibility to figure this out as business owners and leaders, and give new college graduates and internships for students, give them the tools and the skills that they need to be able to move up the ladder. And that is our responsibility. And so that is a plea that I make to all of my fellow business owners, is figure this out.
Yeah, because otherwise you end up being a company that just answers every question because that's the way we've always done it. You know,
you don't want
you're
that.
Stagnating growth and curiosity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Deirdre, I guess last question.
Last question, Ginny, maybe tips, best practices, or parting advice on PESO and AI?
I mean, obviously, I'd love it if everybody became certified in the PESO model because it would help solve a lot of these challenges.
Yes.
But if that's not your bailiwick, or if it's not in the budget right now, then I would really, really look at how to marry your owned and earned media so that you can start to engineer that visibility.
Excellent. Ginny, it's
Yeah.
always so much fun to have you on the show.
I love you guys.
Yeah, we are going to get you back. And quarterly
We're not gonna wait
sounds
a
like a
year.
pretty good idea.
All right, I'm down. You know I'm down.
Very good. Well, thank you for coming on the show. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And we'll see you next month.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.